I love the anonymous culture of just building the things we care about and building the best version possible.
I am Titus. I'm the VP of Go-to-Market at Civic, where we're building tools to enable secure agentic AI with authentication, orchestration, and automation for both technical and non-technical people. On this show, we unpack what's happening in the AI space, from agent ecosystems, tooling, the security that keeps things running. And before we begin, always don't forget, like, subscribe, follow us on your favorite platform. Your support always makes a difference. And today, I'm super excited. We're joined by Shaw Walters, the founder of ElizaOS, and we'll be exploring the open source operating system that's redefining how autonomous agents are built, deployed, and trusted. We'll also dive deep into philosophical and technical stakes of open versus closed AI. So, let's get into it. Shaw, why don't you just quickly introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll take it from there.
My name is Shaw. I go by Shaw Makes Magic on most socials. I was somewhat popular on X before getting banned for creating some agent software that let lots of people bring agents to X, which I thought was kind of interesting, but they had some issues with. And I'm primarily an open source developer. I spend most of my day writing software. I do it on live stream a lot. And most people probably know me from building Eliza, which is the agent framework for building autonomous agents, especially as it relates to Web3. We really have done quite a lot, but it seems like the Web3 community has really embraced our tech and used it to shill meme coins and do all kinds of funny stuff. So, yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. So, I don't know how many people know, but you're powering a 20+ billion agentic ecosystem at this point. What gap did you see that inspired you to build the ElizaOS?
I think that I was really into just agent frameworks and agents, and okay, there's clearly a lot of just building blocks that you would need to even go out and start something. And I thought about React and how React and Next.js and this ecosystem that web developers and a lot of people in Web3 who build dApps have gotten into, and how there's this clear gap between the people who are doing AI stuff and the people who are doing web stuff. I thought, well, I'd been building agent frameworks for a while and agents in Python. I thought, well, if I made this a really nice, friendly TypeScript, just works and solves a couple of pain points and comes with plugins for a lot of the common stuff, that would probably be pretty good. And that really took off last November, December. I think a lot of people realized, oh, I can launch my own agent, I can build my own plugins, I can integrate my thing. And especially since we didn't have we have a token, but we didn't really have anything you could buy or a network or anything that you could compete with. It was just really peanut butter and jelly for I think what a lot of other people were trying to do and trying to agentify their own ecosystems. And so that's kind of why it really hit. I'd say it's probably not 20 billion anymore because the market is down very substantially. But definitely, there was a time there where it was the hype, and I think now we're out of that hype cycle, but we're really just building the stuff. And I think this is hard tech. It takes a lot of work, a lot of testing, a lot of seeing what works and what doesn't work. And now we're climbing up that trough back into the, in the hype cycle, kind of the area of normalcy and happiness that we're aiming for.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you guys started building, and you mentioned this in a number of conversations, you embrace this open source AI ethos. You're reflecting it in ElizaOS. I think for people who are not really familiar with the difference between open source and closed source, what's the difference? Why did you go open source versus closed?
I have a lot of reasons. I'll give you the altruistic reasons, and then I'll give you the non-altruistic reasons. The altruistic reasons are I just think we live in a world where code is relatively cheap, where it's easy to make things, and it's more interesting to build a movement than to build just another SaaS product. I think in my own life, I want to get as much value as I can out of the things that I make, and to me that relates to giving value to other people. And I also want to build things that I'm part of something that other people can come and take part and join in that. And I want to participate in projects as well and be the one, not just I want to be a contributor sometimes and I want to be a maintainer other times. And I just really love that way of working. I love the anonymous culture of just building the things we care about and building the best version possible, and not like paywalling it off, because like like the paywall just makes it a slightly worse thing than what it could be. So that's like my idealistic side. And then the other side, like, look, we're in 2026. Like, the most valuable thing is attention capital. If like, like, why are we on this podcast? Why are we doing any of this? Because we want eyeballs. We want people to see what we're working on. And I just thought it would be like, if I have any way of winning, then I should be utilizing all of that. And one of the ways of getting attention is by giving my code away and letting other people participate and use it and utilize it and talk about it and see what it is and learn from it. And so like if this is a zero sum attention capital gain and we're out to win, then open source is the only and most obvious solution. Why would you make a worse product than your competitor? You would definitely want to make a better one. You'd want it would It's just going to be a race to who makes the most open and free thing, especially when those are like tenets that people in an industry care about, like Web3. So it just made a lot of sense to me. I don't think you can build a business in the future where like I can deploy a whole blockchain like today with one click, with a RAS. I can build a whole app in a few weeks with Claude. Like, so the source code is not the limiting factor anymore. It's much more like the shelling points where we can participate, collaborate, and participate in things.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it has become community UX traction attention, to your point.
Yeah.
So speaking of like the builders and people that are using the framework, what can an ElizaOS agent actually do for people listening who don't know?
Well, I mean, what can a website do? Um, I'd say that what we fundamentally are talking about is a shift in the interface. The background code, like, there's some things that are really great that LLMs can do. Like, it can make a workflow more intelligent or solve a really hard problem, in a much easier, more succinct way. But primarily the difference here is what we're talking about is a different interface. And so you have like kind of, interactive agents where I talk to it, it goes and does some stuff, and it comes back and responds. That could be a Claude Code or like a lot of like a ChatGPT or something. And then you have autonomous agents that just do their own thing. A lot of people have deployed various interactive agents and social agents that post or respond to you. But what I'm really interested in is agents that can, like, we can help to simulate stuff that users do. And that's things like, can agents do prediction markets? Can agents play games? Can they pretend to be users in games so that we can simulate, like, scammers and attacks on the network and all of these kinds of things? We're heavily working on all of that. I can tell you. So we're about to launch Eliza Cloud. This is an open source thing with the goal of enabling developers who've been using our agents to now go and actually monetize them and deploy them. And so it's a very tight loop where like all of the APIs you would need for monetization, login, off, billing, credit system, charging people, all that stuff is all handled. And then generation, you can just ElizaOS deploy the agent. It's all deployed. And so like a lot of people are probably coming in on this side from, oh, now I can monetize an agent. Well, now what can the agent actually do? Well, we have agents like an OTC agent that you can negotiate OTC deals on your behalf. So if I want to sell some ElizaOS tokens at a discount, I can have my agent do that for me. We're about to launch that. The background behind me is from a game called Hyperscape, where we have agents walking around a 3D world in an MMO game, and they're actually playing it's a version of RuneScape. It has NPCs, and then it has agents who play the game and are the NPCs. And then we have just a bunch of other, let's see, like an agentic wallet. We're especially focused on like a new kind of wallet for normies and just casual users, and people who might not like a MetaMask and just want to like make money or trade or whatever. So really rethinking the wallet. I mean, there's a lot of other projects in flight, and that's just the stuff that we're working on. Oh, yeah, the biggest project we're working on is Babylon, which is another game where we have agents like prediction market agents that are all. It's basically a copy of X. So they're on X, they're reading the X feed, they're making predictions and bets, they're joining group chats, they're chatting with each other. And so this is stuff where we think that like autonomous agents are really interesting. And with a game like Babylon, we can also collect all of the data from all the agents performing, and then go and rank it and build better agents from it. So these are like, it's like a closed simulation environment and loop. I'm very interested in how we can use tokens to financialize stuff, but ultimately everything to me comes back to like, we need to make agents that are self-improving. They need to learn from what they're doing, and then they need to actually get better at it. And that's how we deliver like long-term value to users and do something that's not just like ChatGPT wrapper, basically. So we're pretty deep in like our own models, reinforcement learning, all that stuff as well.
Yeah, and I feel like when in crypto we have this kind of like concept of you get reinforcement by getting these tokens as rewards in a way, right? And the agents have wallets, and they can have wallets, and the person behind the agent has wallets, so you can like have a nice mechanism there.
In reinforcement learning, the hardest problem is probably credit assignment and reward. Like what do you say is the criteria for good or bad, right? And like how do you know if what you did was good or bad? And but crypto, like it's relatively straightforward. Like did you make or lose money, right? Like that the reward and credit assignment signal is very straightforward and immediate. And I think that could be leveraged pretty well. Like there's a lot of things that make financial very hard for LLMs and agents, but that ability to like interpret social information, turn that into something that directly correlates to P&L is like a really interesting thing from an AI perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think doing math is still tough, but gathering signal and interpreting is not.
Yeah. And the AI can use a calculator if we really need to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean we've been playing with that internally as well. Like it's easier to send data to like a Google Sheet or something and have it do formulas there than have it do its own math in context,
Oh
which is
yeah,
crazy.
absolutely. And a lot of what we're seeing now is like, well, just write your own Python programs as you need them and let it do the math because it knows how to set up the equation pretty well. It's just like not, it's kind of weirdly imbalanced in that way. They call it the jagged frontier, right? Where it's like incredibly smart in some ways and just like ludicrously dumb in others.
But in some way, it just resembles like us. Kind of humans are also great at certain things and then horrible at others. I'm very bad at arts and crafts, for example. But I'm very good at this kind of thing where I'm talking to people and I'm like talking about technology.
Yeah, I mean, we're judging everything by our own criteria of like what we take for granted, which is that we take like billions of photons every minute, and then we turn it into like a normal picture, and it's just like, oh yeah, of course, this is totally normal to us, but that stuff is actually like millions billions of years of evolution, and you know, but on the other hand, like yeah, massive data processing of zeros and ones is very challenging for us. Even adding math, I'd say the LLMs are better than me at math now, actually. Honestly, they've gotten to the point where they're actually good at math too.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they know everything that's like publicly available, so that's I think their competitive advantage. I can't hold that much context in my brain,
No.
so there's that. But coming back to kind of the open source ecosystem, defining AI adoption, I think you believe that there will be an Android moment for AI agents. I'm curious to kind of dive into that. What does that mean? How does that look like?
Uh, I mean, I really think what's happening is like a shift in compute. Like we're kind of assuming that all of the compute is going to happen in the cloud on these like massive machines, but really like I only need some of my compute to happen there. Like I need the best possible coding agent running on the best possible hardware. But for most of the questions I have, like I'm asking ChatGPT Mini. I'm asking like a small model that could probably run on my phone, basically. And Google and Apple have a lot of incentive to get this running on your phone, right? Um, and so they're definitely like if you see the stuff that's coming out of Apple, it's not massive models and cloud. It's here's how we got Stable Diffusion to run on an iPhone and stuff like that. And I think that's a very promising future where we can have like the big concern that I have in the long run of this is like I really want my data on my device. I really want to own it. I want to be able to export it. I want to be able to do stuff with it. Not just for like the ideal stuff, like the ideology of open source, blah blah blah, but like just practically, I want to take all my data, I want to pipe it into my other apps. I want my other apps to be able to access it. I want this like really nice interoperable agentic future. And that just like I think that's going to require all that data to be local and accessible to me and permissioned by me in the same way that like things on my computer are. It's crazy that we've like defaulted to this like hyper sandbox world where I can't even like put my data from one app to another kind of thing. So I'd really love to see a world where like there's a new kind of interface for your phone. There's a new kind of app. You're just like, hey, I need this. I want this. I want to send this message. And it's just like, it's creating the UI on the fly. It's like, and it's just pulling whatever you need as it goes. It's calling whatever MCPs it needs to find. And I can imagine that being like a really brilliant open source ecosystem and basically built, I mean, Android is pretty captured by Google, but it is still like a pretty flexible. If you're going to go build an operating system, you're probably going to reach for that and build on it, kind of thing. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where we want to go with this, is like going deeper and deeper down the stack, where agents are just like part of the operating system.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a narrative emerging in terms of like the models themselves. Like a smaller model sometimes suffers like very little degradation in terms of performance if you remove like 80% of its size, and you end up with something that can run on an M2 or M3 or M4 chip instead. And that gets you to the use cases that you're talking about, which is super exciting, because then you don't depend on like, I don't know, some H100 cluster somewhere eating up a ton of electricity.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, and I really believe in decentralized compute. This is something that I'm working on in the background here. I was trying to just get, okay, it blows my mind, but it is shockingly hard to just like rent a GPU with a wallet, or a CPU, just anything with a wallet. You have, like, everything has KYC and API keys and all this stuff. I was like, I just need a GPU to do some compute right now for this game. Like, it's shocking. So I'm definitely like trying to, I don't know, if you have any solutions, but I basically like, we have to just build this and solve this for ourselves. Um, there are a few things. There's a lot of things that I've seen, but like, there's just so many complications, like like bridging tokens over to this chain to pay for it, and then and like not having ETH and all this. It's like such a pain in the ass. And I think I'd love to see that friction go away, and then I think that we'll have like the decentralized compute future, because it's just like the marketplace makes sense. Before all of this, I was working at a cloud company, and we were using decentralized compute to power all of our AI services, because it was like 10 times cheaper. We're renting, like, from Vast AI, we're renting like 3080s to do image generation, and they cost us like 20 cents an hour. And our competitors are paying $2 an hour for A100s, right? And then they're the same speed. There's no difference. And so I think that, there's definitely like a world where this makes sense. But also then I look and I'm like, I think it's going to be like how it was with IBM, man. Like, you had these crazy ass mainframes, and then eventually you just have that in your pocket. Like, why wouldn't I just have all the compute in my pocket at some point? So anyway, I hope we get to that future. It's still like 10 years off, but this stuff is definitely, kind of Moore's law, still accelerating quite fast.
Yeah, I mean, you look at last year and it's like, compared to this year, it seems like Stone Age in some respects.
Oh yeah. I mean, like Opus 4.5 versus Opus 3, right? That's like a year and a half, a year maybe. Huge step change in quality, and they reduced the price. And the price reduction, I'm pretty sure, is because they swapped in the new H200s into the data center, and they're just like, way faster and cheaper than what they were running, the H100s, which were way faster and cheaper than the A100s. And this is all in the last like 3 years. They've already had like 2 hardware cycles of like, yeah, this doubles the speed and performance and reduces cost. And so even something like Claude Opus, like, now it's like 5x cheaper than it was when it launched or something, and a way better quality. So I think, it's definitely, there's been some good advice from some people in Web 2 AI. It's like, just if you're building a business, just like, this is gonna get free. This is gonna get so cheap. Don't worry about the cost today, because in 5 years, this is just gonna be a commodity. And I definitely think that's the way things are going.
Yeah, I agree. The more competition we see, both from closed source and open source like providers, we'll see the token cost go to zero
What's been
eventually.
incredible with open source is, I mean, like DeepSeek, when it launched, it was not the best model. It still didn't hit the benchmarks as well as the best ones, but it was like within 1%, and it was open source, right? And that was just a huge thing. And I think that, because it had so much more material advantage, and now we're all using Quen and Quen DeepSeek and like these models that, because there's a whole ecosystem building up around them. And I think that ultimately, when you build closed source, you're basically saying, well, my engineering team is going to build everything. And when you build open source, you're like, well, there's going to be some randos building all this crazy, like Llama. Like, there's just so much stuff around Llama, right? And all of it is just like a mid model that was never the best, but it was the best thing we could get. So I think there's definitely a lot of, I think that's going to, I just don't see a world where the big labs don't eventually open source their stuff as they hit like kind of a quality saturation, and there's just like nowhere else for them to go, because they will hit a point where it's like, it's so freaking good that even if you made it better, I wouldn't be able to notice. I think that's where this is going. And I think in that case, it's like, well, why would you close this off? Like, you have competitors you have to crush. You should definitely open source that and crush them, and then everyone else will too. And I think there's a race to the bottom that ultimately I hope benefits us. It seems inevitable to me.
Yeah, no, I agree in principle, and I think myself included, a lot of people have a bunch of misconceptions about open source in general, but also open source AI. I feel more somehow personally more comfortable with like I don't know Anthropic or OpenAI's models because they're controlled in a way by that engineering team versus like a DeepSeek that I kind of have to run myself, and also like do I feel competent enough to understand what that open source software is doing? Are there other misconceptions that you kind of hear about in the open source AI space?
I mean, I think that there's just this belief, like, from where I stand, I could pretty much with Claude 4.5 take any application I see, take the research paper and implement and copy it completely. And so, like, the only things that I can't do are things that have massive compute, right? Like, the mode on something like Claude is I just don't have the $100 million to train it. Even if I could code all the stuff and, like, like, they're just using the same transformer recipes as everybody else with a little bit of flavor. But their training, their data. That's incredibly valuable. And so I think that there's maybe a red herring here where, like, all of the models I think will be open source, all the research will be open source because there's just so much value in the mind share and the hiring and like letting researchers publish and all this stuff. But that because it's not where the money is. Like that's just not what matters. What matters is, do you have 10,000 GPUs that can train and serve this thing? And I guess my hope though is that if this thing, like, you can't run DeepSeek locally even if you wanted to, because you just don't have a $150,000 H200 rig. But if you did, um, well, it's still, yeah, like, it's not scalable. It's not served in like a nice serverless API package. It's just not like very practical. And I think that, like, the mode on AI is like the mode that Vercel has, which is it's just way easier to use Opus, like Claude or OpenAI or something. But I think that, um, I think that, like, there's a lot of problems with that. Like, I can't do reinforcement learning with Claude, right? I can't improve it on my stack. And ultimately, I think that probably, like, the best models just will be so far beyond good enough that, like, there will be a world where you're downloading apps that have like embedded LLMs. Like, they're not like the current paradigm where, like, you download a llama and you download a model and you can act like, that's horrible. But you can imagine, like, oh, I downloaded this app on my phone and there's an agent and the LLM is actually in the app and it's just like totally managed and nice for you. I think that's the world we're really, like, we're heading toward, and Apple and Google are like really, really on top of this for mobile. So you can even take a lot of the current LLMs and like push them down onto the app, like in generation for everything. And I think that'll be kind of a paradigm we see where it's just like open source will really benefit the smaller, lower end local stuff much, much more. And really, you're going to start to see this as like embedded into applications the way that, like, graphics and 3D games and stuff are. It's like, you have sort of graphics requirements or whatever. I think I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah,
I, you know,
it does, and I think your analogy, like to like, well, what does the website do? When I asked you about what does an agent do or what can an agent do, is like I think we're getting to a point where it's abstracted to the point where you don't really care if it's an agent or not, or if it's a model or not behind the scenes. You just want to get the job done.
yeah, yeah. And the reason I'm choosing a local model versus cloud is really just money, right? Like, it's way easier for me to have you download an app that has no models in it and it just calls an API. But ultimately, they're very expensive. And if I can get it to run locally, then it opens up like a new range of applications where I can just like leave your phone cooking, for example, and do a cool autonomous agent or something like that. And so I think that part of this is like, this is just like a market that will be filled, right? There's just going to be a market for free to play agentic AI stuff that runs locally, and that might be like kind of a dark horse that drives a lot of the innovation.
So speaking of agents, I think there's one detail that like always comes to mind when I talk to people about agentic AI, and like I think when it comes to how do you verify and control what the agent is doing, especially for these fully autonomous ones? Like how can people trust that they're doing the right things? Like, well, how can you make sure they're on track versus off track?
I think that there's this idea that consumers will observe any of this, and I think it will never happen. I don't think that the average consumer will ever look at any observability or anything, and that they are already trusting developers with that much information every time they log in or use a website or type in anything. And I think that that level of highly lax consumer security culture will definitely continue. On the other hand, there is a practical reality, which is that when I'm building an agent, I need it to do what it's supposed to do. I need it to be reliable. I need good tools. I need to be able to like see the entire trace of its runs, like what it chose to do, what it chose to say, what, I need everything, right? And I need to be able to see it. I need to be able to observe it. Um, so there's kind of two dimensions. One is like, oh well, we have to do like on-chain verifiability, and I think that for some things that's very useful. Like we're building a game right now, and we want all of the model calls and everything to be verifiable so that it's reproducible, so that it can be like done on chain and permissionlessly. And that's just like it's like a that's just like it serves a purpose. And I can imagine that there's certain like scenarios where if you're using agents you don't trust, then having that ability to go back and see the logs is kind of nice, especially if it's like you have an agentic system contacting another agentic system, so it's like you're not seeing the logs. But generally, I think that mostly like this is a bit overblown and overhyped in our industry as like kind of people looking for a problem for their solution. And the practical reality is we just don't have like agents contacting agents and buying services from them, and like this is all like still pretty sci-fi and like far out. And so like with where we're at right now, the stuff we really need is like, can I actually build a good agent? Can I? So it's like observability tools, like like just good dev tooling, right? Like anything else, basically. Where are the errors? Where is the flow stopping? How reliable is this? How do I test that the agent can do this 10 out of 10 times? How do I benchmark my agent? I think these are like the real immediate problems. And then and then as businesses adopt these, then I think we'll start to get into those more like detailed like verification issues and stuff.
Yeah, I agree. We're like more almost like in the building phase right now, and before you make sure like the agent works, you need to be able to actually like make sure you're getting it to the level that you want it to reliably. And I think that's been the biggest issue with any kind of LLM application that I've worked on in the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's getting much, much more reliable on the model side. Like the ability to, when I started with this, we had to like make sure that it formatted the JSON correctly. And we had 4K context windows. So everything was like smashing it down. And now it like pretty much you can just tell it do this thing and it outputs perfect JSON actions, and it's just like not only is it the context window much, much bigger, like, 64 times bigger basically in many cases, but also like the amount of information I need to get in there for it to respond well has gone down. So there's a great feedback loop here. Like if we can build apps where we have agents actually doing the things we want them to do, then we can go and find the good examples of that and train them and make them better at that. And yeah, and that's becoming like that even just saying that, like that used to be like researchers and PhDs an incredible amount of work, and now it's like there's just like a toolkit, like thinking machines release tinker, and there's a bunch of like reinforcement learning toolkits and stuff that just make it incredibly easy to manage. um so all of this is coming together to say that like AI just like it's just easier to build as well. It's easier to build and integrate all this stuff.
So that being said, right, like it's easier than ever. We have all these tools, all these like um, bigger pipelines and more reliable outputs. Um, and yet, I think you mentioned at some point that a lot of the AI projects are building the same things. They're missing real innovation. What's going on there? What's the most overhyped idea in AI agents right now, and why is it wrong?
I mean, I think it depends. I like in Web 2 AI, there's already been many years, like since 2023 or whatever, there's been like, oh, agents hype, and VC's already placed their bets and companies have already boomed and busted. And Web 3 caught on to agents a little bit later, and I think had a much like a similar but much more like retail hype reaction to this stuff. And so in Web 2 agents, I think like there's the obvious thing of like, well, are you doing something that ChatGPT and Claude aren't just gonna like do in a year? Are you actually solving a real person's problem here, or are you just like throwing AI on top of something and being like agents, that'll fix everything? And most companies there are running into like the same really dumb practical realities of like getting users and user acquisition and churn and like just competing for attention and all of that stuff. Um, I think and so I wouldn't say that the use cases in like Web 2 AI, like a lot of the fluff and LARP like kind of already got cleared out, and now people like the people around are pretty practical, and like there's a lot of B2B SaaS and business process automation and like really boring but probably pretty profitable stuff. And then on the other side, because there's just so many clients, so like a lot of these startups kind of default into like getting big customers and just like solving their problems, and there's money in that. And then on the other side, you have Web 3 AI, where it's like, oh well, obviously our agents should trade for us, and they should like predict magically information that 50 years of traditional finance hasn't been able to crack with the smartest minds of all time. But this LLM can definitely do that, sure. And then they, like, hey, let's build an AI trading platform, and this AI agent will definitely trade for you. And it's like totally a fucking LARP, and like nothing about that will ever work. It's just like completely defies reality and science and like 50 years of computer science and everything that everyone in AI has already learned. But like there's just this focus on like jumping to the 10th step without thinking about what the first step and the second step are. Like, can AI agents be good at trading DeFi? Absolutely. Like, yeah, if you do the science and you like actually built a trading regimen and gave them the right data and like had the right contextual inputs and all that, like you could definitely carve out niches where AI agents could be like profitably trading and doing interesting stuff like that. But like this idea that you just put an LLM like with the ability to call actions, and like the way that crypto responded to like N of one or these other like, look, it's deep seek trading money. It's like it is so unbelievably stupid to me that people are buying it and falling for it and like even building it. Like I thought of that idea. I ran the numbers. I did the simulations. I realized it wouldn't work. We launched a trading agent. He loses money. It's just like, why would we waste time with this? And then watching so many people in the space just jump to that and getting a lot of hype. And it's just like, oh my God, it's like the blind leading the blind over here. And none of these people know anything about AI. They're just like plugging in APIs and saying, AI agents. And it just, it kind of cheapens the whole thing a little bit, I guess. So I think that's definitely where the most hype that I see is this idea that like generally any thesis where like the AI can magically do something that a human couldn't do is definitely wrong. And then any getting the AI to do anything a human could do is you have to really ask like, well, what are the things that are like outside of the model? Like, if you're trading, well, it's like, well, how do you get into the right group chats? How do you mine the right alpha? How do you do the right social feeds? You could probably make a great trading agent, but you'd really have to think about like what was the human process for that made it good. And it's just not going to be magic, I guess. And so that's the thing, is people treating AI like it's magic or it can do this magical thing instead of realizing like it's literally just trained on all of us. It's just going to do what we would do, kind of. And with way less hands, which makes everything a lot harder for it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that we're seeing as well, like in our applications and use cases, is like it works when you can treat it like a more junior employee to you, which you are the expert, and you give it a task that is well known and sort of repeatable, so that it can like expand on that, as opposed to do something from scratch that you don't really have enough information on.
Yeah, totally.
So is that like kind of the use cases that you think should get more attention? Is that what builders should be focusing on?
Well, I think that builders should generally just follow the thesis that if you see something in your market that already has dominance and you try to copy it, you will fail, because you neither have the first mover advantage, nor the marketing, nor the attention, nor the resources that, and you already have a massive entrenched competitor. And I just don't understand, like, why would someone look at Pump Fun and be like, you know what I should do? I should copy Pump Fun. I should copy a successful business that already has all the attention and build the same thing they built. And so, like, as a founder, the worst thing you can do is copy somebody else. The best thing you can do, like the thing that you are riding on, is that you are going to build something original that has outsized network effects and a power law return. So that means that like there is some chance that my crazy ass idea, like, hear me out. What if we had this thing called crypto and we put smart contracts on it that ran software? And then like, 20 years ago, you'd be like, that's a crazy ass idea. There's no way that's going to get adoption. But that's the thing that got like outsized. Everybody is here because of that thing, right? I was talking to somebody who was like, yeah, Ethereum was a really. I heard Sally talk about Ethereum, and I thought it was kind of a crazy idea, but I bought into the ICO anyway. And I think that like you have to be thinking of like what is an idea that if it came true would come with like 1000x SpaceX level returns. And if you're not doing that, you're just copying someone else. It's like you're not contributing to the human thing at all. You're just choosing self-interest and basically wasting your life on something that won't work. So I don't know, I think that like where could we go with agents? Well, there's an entirely new genre of games, an entirely new genre of entertainment and interactive stuff and alternate reality, real world games and like interesting things you could do. There's entirely new classes of applications that you could build. Agents can get you your time back and automate a lot of the things in your life. So you can build like anti-attention apps or apps that don't need to engage in the attention economy. There's just so many like new things that we could build. And I have been disappointed that like, when it comes to Web3, that basically 90% of builders fall into one of a small handful of very obvious categories. And I just don't think any of those apps will win. And so we've really chosen the strategy of just building interesting stuff. And like our stuff will probably get much more traction because it's interesting and new. And people want interesting and new, and we're not copying anybody else. And so I'd really encourage anybody else to do the same, especially in crypto where there's not that much of it, you
Yeah,
know?
100% echo that. I think the biggest kind of annoying thing I've seen in hackathons, and we've been to a lot of them in the past couple of years, is the same ideas being recycled over and over again without like the new ethos, new vibes, new innovation coming through. But I
Yeah.
want to come back to something you said earlier, like um, attention community. Like you guys built one of the like biggest repositories when it comes to like agentic AI toolkits. Like how did you build and grow such an active community, especially for like an open source project? I think kind of how do you get beyond the cold start problem there? How do you foster that community? How do you make sure it grows?
People don't actually want the repo. They don't want the code. What they want is the thing that they see that the code is doing. And once they see that, they're going to jump on and adopt it. So, like, I had been working on Eliza for a very long time. I had an agent with Ethereum wallets, with like talking on socials 2 years before all of this, like in 2022 or 2023, basically when you could do all of this. Like, it was very clear to me, but like the average person just could not get it. And then what happened is we launched an agent, and that agent had a meme coin, and suddenly like people saw like Truth Terminal, and they're like, "Well, I want Truth Terminal. These guys can give me Truth Terminal in a box, and I can just get it." And they were willing to surmount any amount of technical challenge for that end reward, right? So I'd say that when we launched Eliza, it was very much like a research side project. I was working at a nonprofit doing like AI stuff there. This was what my passion project. And it just happened to be right place, right time. And it was not quality. Like we had a lot of issues. It was extremely basic, but it solved this thing of you could just clone a repo and have an agent on social media shilling your meme coin in like 20 minutes. And that was like very breakthrough. And I realized like with all of this stuff, it's like the value proposition, that initial USP, um, and then like the first 5 minutes of getting started and getting it going really really matter for these projects. It's really like any other SaaS or any kind of product. Like it's really a top of the funnel problem, and once you funnel people in and they're getting value, then they're willing to go with you on the journey from there. It's been hard because we launched a meme coin which funded a lot of this, but fundamentally like our open source project doesn't make us money, and we have to balance like building products and things that can make us money with supporting the community. And a lot of the times the community has felt like not as well supported maybe, or like, like, hey, you should shill my stuff. And it's like, we have to balance that with like, what do we get out of this? Like, honestly, you're using our stuff. Are you donating? Are you contributing? Is there any, and what's really brilliant about Ethereum, is that it's like a beautiful open source project that also has this way of making money implicitly when you launch it. Like when you're part of Ethereum, it has network fees and that pays for everything. And not having that network fee flywheel, well, it made it really easy for other people who have network fee flywheels to adopt us. But on the other hand, it's been really hard for our project to be to be sustainable, right? And so, a lot our focus is really on like how do we build a cloud and make it easier for developers so we can make money and offer things that are financialized. And I think that's been a real challenge. So in order to do that in a way that I feel like will actually work and not just like, oh, let's pivot to SaaS cloud, we're really trying to think about like, well, how can we enable the people who come to the open source stack to make money? Like, if like, how can you come and we're like, we'll handle deployment, billing, payments, all that for you, and you just build your thing and deploy it, and then we make money, you make money, we're handling all this stuff. And so I think that that's a very important part of building an open source project is making money, making it sustainable. But I think that the way to do that virtuously is like, well, how do we now enable all these developers to come who came to make money as well? And then we make money when they make money, and now we're all in this together. And so, yeah, I think that's a very, very important question to try to answer. A lot of people when we got hot, like tried to make their own agent frameworks and launch and do our thing. And I think that was like good for them to learn, and I appreciate that. But like, it was pretty dumb of them to expect that it would be profitable to compete with a free open thing with another free open thing that just has less attention. And I really think that if you're a dev, like you have to kind of build something to really understand it. So I understand a lot of people like building their own frameworks and stuff, but it was interesting to see like how much competition, and again, not people like innovating, but just like copying our thing and doing slightly different their way. It was, and a lot of that obviously was like the financial incentive or perceived financial incentives, although like all of those tokens are dead now because like they have no attention, and it was never really about that. So uh, it's all very interesting. Like the politics of open source are very interesting unto themselves. Although I think you have to really think of it as like part of a business strategy. If your goal is to build a sustainable open source project that's not just a one-off or a hobby, how does it keep going? How do I fund devs working on this for 10 years is something you have to kind of think of upfront.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's what we see with most successful open source projects. You have that layer of like financialization, to your point, on top of the open source code. That without that, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, but like
Um,
so many of them are like either kind of half baked and like they're taking away the cool features of the open source, or they're like, like, well, we just have to like do a SaaS, and it's like not a very good. It's just like very clear that they were like trying to monetize something that ultimately they just built because it was cool. And I'd love to see more like deep funding and funding structures that enable like what would be ideal for me is like if you build on Eliza and you make money, that like some of that comes back to us automatically, because then we don't have to ever compete with you. We could just build the framework, we build the tech, we can make your life easier. But sort of because people don't do that, we sort of have to build the competition, right? We have to build the cloud and the apps and all that stuff. And yeah, it's a tough balance.
so it sounds like the cloud is kind of the big thing for 2026. Anything else you guys are excited about?
I think Babylon is going to be huge. I think that's a real good demonstration of like you can go and play a prediction market in a synthetic virtual SimCity kind of game with a bunch of AI agents and NPCs. You can launch your own AI agents. And if you're an AI researcher, you can like build your own stuff and connect it and like benchmark against the world and like show, like there's a leaderboard and competition. And I'd really like to see this kind of blending of like actual web to AI researchers with more of the financialization to enable their dreams. So Babylon is a game we've been building. We've got like 300 plus thousand signups on it right now. It's going to be hot. It's a lot of farmers, but it's a game where farming is like very much encouraged and part of it. So I think that's a good important game mechanic note is like if you're building Web3 games, then like you have to think about how farmers can be good users. So that's going to be launched pretty soon. I'm really excited for that. Be a big airdrop on ElizaOS token holders and stuff too for that.
Very cool, very cool. And then last but not least, if people want to stay up to date with the latest on Eliza Labs, where can they find you?
Well, we're trying to get our X back. So it'll be, I should have my Shaw Makes Magic back on X in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. I'm on Farcaster. I think Farcaster is great. We should all be on it. So I'm Farcaster slash Shaw Makes Magic. And we're at ElizaOS.ai, and we all like hang out and build on Discord as well. I don't know. We don't have like a ton of web presence. We're much more like social media, just build in public kind of people.
Gotcha. Well, we'll have all those links in the show notes, so you can
Cool.
click on them, subscribe, join the communities, all that fun stuff. So yeah, for everybody listening in, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on your favorite platform. It helps us bring you great content. And don't forget to check out civic.com, check out Nexus, learn more about what we do, and see you next time on the podcast. Thank you, Shaw, for coming. Over and out.
Thanks for having me.